the voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the
Hey, it's Scott.
Jennings
Thanks for
Show.
listening to Common Sense for the American People, taking a day off. But my friend Jennifer Horn is here to guide you through the breaking news of the day. Jennifer, take it away.
Thank you so much, Scott Jennings, at bringing common sense for the American people. I am Jennifer Horn from Salem Media in Los Angeles. I host the Morning Answer on AM 870 and AM 590, The Answer, and happy to be sitting in truly for my friend Scott Jennings, who, as you probably have figured out, is one of the hardest working guys in the radio and television business. And so he is taking some well-deserved time off today. He'll be out again on Monday. I'll be here with you, but he'll be back on Tuesday. And sometimes, guys, you know, when you are fighting liberal craziness, especially on places like CNN, well, you kind of have to refill that tank so that you have more to give. So that's what Scott's up to. He will be back with you on Tuesday. In the meantime, there is a lot going on. First, I don't know if you're superstitious, but today is Friday the 13th. Cue the expensive sound effect. Dun, dun, dun. And we'll wait and see what happens. I think we're going to be okay. I have a good feeling about it. It's also President's Day weekend. Happy Valentine's Day tomorrow to all of you. President Trump is heading right now, as we speak, to North Carolina to celebrate members of the special forces who went into Venezuela, who stormed in on the third day of the new year, January 3rd, and took out Nicolas Maduro. I know Scott's talked to you about this before. What could only happen with President Trump sitting in the White House is actual, action to get Maduro, who is a murderous dictator, who's wanted by law enforcement all over the world, to get him actually out of his home in Venezuela safely with really no casualties, and away he was whisked to prison in New York. And now President Trump is going to pay tribute to those young men and women who helped make that happen. The First Lady, Melania Trump, is also going to be making the trip with the president to Fort Bragg. This is one of the largest military bases in the world by population. They're going to be spending time with military families this weekend. Trump has been hitting the road a lot more often, and he's going to continue this in 2026, obviously, because of the midterms, and he has committed that he must see Republicans win. Otherwise, we know what's going to happen, impeachment palooza. And he has lots to celebrate today. It may be Friday the 13th for the rest of us, but President Trump is celebrating really incredible economic numbers. Not only has the stock market been just singing, the Dow hitting 50,000, jobs report that came out showing the growth in private sector jobs rather than government jobs, which was quite the opposite under Joe Biden. You remember under Biden, jobs would go up, but they were all government jobs. With Trump, those government jobs have come down, and the private sector has been bolstered by incredible growth. So that's really good news. But today, early this morning, maybe while some of you were sleeping, inflation numbers came out, and they fell to a nearly 5-year low. Incredibly great news for the economy. This was driven by apartment rental price growth. That slowed. Gas prices fell pretty much everywhere, but in my home state of California, where I'm happy to tell you we still are paying $4 to $5 a gallon, depending on what county you are in California. Thank you, Gavin Newsom, who'd love to be your president, America, so watch out for him. But across the country, most of you are feeling a lot of relief at the gas pump, and so this has driven inflation down. Inflation dropped to 2.4% compared with a year earlier. That's down from 2.7% in December, and not too far away from the Federal Reserve's target of 2%. Now, as President Trump was headed off to visit the troops in Fort Bragg, he talked about the rate of inflation and some of that great news as he got on Marine One, cut 13.
Good financial numbers, very low inflation. We brought costs way down, and the numbers were surprising, except me, they weren't surprising. So the inflation numbers just announced, as you know, are way down, and we have it back in track. We had the worst inflation in the history of our country, and now we have very modest inflation, which is what you want to have.
Now, President Trump is celebrating his economic wins, and he is going to be celebrating the men and women of the military at Fort Bragg today. One thing he won't be celebrating is what seems all but inevitable, and that is a partial government shutdown, at least when it comes to funding of the Department of Homeland Security. That is expected to kick in tonight at midnight. Now, keep in mind, Democrats are showboating here and totally allowing a shutdown because they want to have control over ICE agents. They want to eliminate the masking. They want body cameras on all of the immigration agents out there. The problem with this plan, which is pretty harebrained, if you ask me, is that you've got ICE, which has been fully funded for the next several years because of the big, beautiful bill. So they are hurting Americans like you who might be traveling this weekend, Americans like me, Americans who work in the Coast Guard. This is going to impact other departments within the Department of Homeland Security, but it is not, by and large, going to impact anybody within ICE. Now, President Trump spoke about this DHS funding. He tried to make a deal with Democrats. They all left town yesterday. Many of them headed to Germany, and they're not coming back. So we should see a shutdown tonight at midnight. President Trump on the Department of Homeland Security funding as he boarded Marine One just moments ago, cut 12.
Are you anticipating cutting a deal with Democrats to end the potential shutdown for DHS?
We'll see what happens. We always have to protect our law enforcement. It's very important. They've done a great job. Remember, they've taken out hundreds of thousands of criminals out of our country.
Now, yesterday you had Tom
and everywhere. Murder numbers, crime numbers of any kind. We have the best numbers. We've taken out hundreds of thousands of criminals out of our country. We have to protect our law enforcement.
Yesterday, you had the border czar, Tom Homan, who made the announcement that the surge in Minneapolis is over. Now, don't think that was just because, well, it was time to go. This was all very political because right now you couldn't have the optics. The American people love the immigration efforts of President Trump. You can look at survey after survey. You can look at poll after poll. They support the safe border that President Trump has created. What most Americans don't like and what they don't have the appetite for is the unrest in the streets. Like we saw, and the news media was happy to show us everything that was going on in Minneapolis. Democrats were going to bank on those images to support their shutdown, to support the fact that they didn't want to fund the Department of Homeland Security. But I would tell you President Trump is wise enough to know that without those images, Democrats will take ownership, at least for a while, of this government shutdown of DHS. Now, President Trump spoke a little bit more about this. This is cut 17 from moments ago.
You have to remember, if you look at Homeland Security, if you look at what they've done, if you look at what ICE has done at Border Patrol, we have the safest border in the history of our country. Nobody comes in other than if they come in legally. If you remember, just a little while ago, a year and a half ago, for a 4-year period, they allowed 25 million people in our country. Many of these people are murderers and drug dealers. A horrible thing. We've gotten a lot of them out. We now have the best records in the history of our country on crime. It was just announced our crime numbers are the best in 125 years. So I am here to protect law enforcement and our great police and ICE and Border Patrol and everybody. I'm here to protect them because they're protecting us. And the job they've done is incredible.
All right, that was President Trump literally about a half an hour ago, getting ready to board Marine One on his way to Air Force One to go to Fort Bragg, talking about the looming partial government shutdown. Again, places where you might see this is in TSA, Coast Guard. You're going to have just slower movement within the Department of Homeland Security. We're going to talk about that later today in the program with Chad Wolf, former Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. He'll join us in the next hour, and we'll go through what this means for you and for the American people. But certainly, President Trump reminding Americans that this is about the Democrats not supporting law enforcement. This is about the Democrats trying to make a scene over ICE and instead hurting you and hurting the men and women who serve this country. So we'll dive into that this hour. We'll also bring you some of the spice from a hearing yesterday with the Attorney General in Minnesota, Keith Ellison. It's the Scott Jennings Show. I'm Jennifer Horn. Common sense for the American people.
Hey, it's Scott. Listen, when I prep for my CNN debates, I need to know exactly where the national conversation is headed. And it turns out it's helpful to know that in your everyday life as well. And that's why I tried out Free Spoke. Now it's my go-to place for search and for news. When you use FreeSpoke, it's a search platform that gives you the full story. You get information from the left, you get it from the right, you get non-mainstream, you get independent journalists, you get podcast insights. What you get from FreeSpoke is the full story all in one place. And here's the thing, when you search on FreeSpoke, you know they are not going to sell your data. It's quite something, actually. It's fast, it's private, it's unbiased. FreeSpoke helps me research topics and make sure that I understand the full picture. You can have this tool as well. Just go to freespoke.com/Jennings to download their app for free. And as an exclusive for my listeners, use promo code Jennings after you download it and get 35% off the premium version. You go ad-free and you unlock deeper elite tools to have control over your information. So don't rely on incomplete information. Take control of your own information environment. See every perspective so you can think for yourself, just like I do before every debate.
Freedom to speak clearly with no leftist lunacy. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
Here we are. Thanks for joining us. It is the Scott Jennings Show. I, spoiler alert, am not Scott Jennings. I'm Jennifer Horn, happy to be filling in for my friend Scott. He'll be back on Tuesday. One thing he and I really share in common is our love for an organization called Child Help. More kids are being targeted online through gaming platforms, social media, and messaging apps. Big tech isn't protecting them. These companies, in fact, profit from screen time and engagement. And when predators slip through the cracks, families pay the price. Child Help hears from children every day who were contacted through games and apps, kids who were groomed, manipulated, or threatened by adults pretending to be someone else. One boy reached out through Child Help's chat hotline, terrified and ashamed. An adult he met in an online game was demanding photos and threatening to lie to his parents if he didn't comply. That chat may have saved his life. That's why Child Help matters. Your donation supports life-saving programs. Every $27 can help save one child from abuse. If big tech won't protect our kids, then we have to do it. Donate at childhelp.org/Scott. Do it today. Childhelp.org/Scott or text Child Help to 94878. That's Child Help to 94878 and give $27 today. We appreciate it. Truly, it's a great organization and a great cause. All right. I don't care what kind of TV you watch. I know we all watch different TV shows out there. Some of you stream. Some of you may watch, the old-fashioned way, network television shows. This week, there has been no better TV than watching some of the hearings that have happened on Capitol Hill. Have you watched any of them? Have you seen them? We had ICE Chief Todd Lyons, who things were pretty spicy there. And then you had the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, who, really got into some altercations, if you will, with some of the members of the House Judiciary Committee. I mean, I even saw Jim Jordan blush during that testimony. Well, the Senate said, you know what, we cannot be left out. And the Senate had a hearing this week with the Attorney General from Minnesota, former chair of the DNC, Keith Ellison. Political animal, to be sure. And he got into a sparring match with several of the senators. Probably most interesting was the back and forth with Senator Josh Hawley. If you missed it, you must see it. Cut 10.
You helped fraudsters defraud your state and this government of $9 billion, and you got a fat campaign contribution out of it. You ought to be indicted.
True. Well,
that's the truth.
I think we've made the point. Let's keep the tenor.
Well,
just
for the record, I'll ask how I want
he's
to,
lying,
Paul.
and that's the truth.
Oh no, this is all on the record,
no, sir.
Did you bother to investigate where the money that you facilitated their fraud for, where it went? Do you know where it went, what it was used for, the fraudulent money? I do, because we just heard testimony about it yesterday.
Because we were
funds
key
went
players in the
hundreds of millions of
investigation.
dollars to terrorist groups, to transnational criminal organizations, to the drug trade, to drug trafficking, to child trafficking. And you took $10,000
That's a lie.
and helped them do it. You know, the other thing is, whistleblowers came to you as early as 2019. Let's look. As early as 2019, whistleblower. Don't talk over me. As early as 2019, it's my hearing, pal. As early as 2019,
don't call me
whistleblowers came to. Well, I should call you prisoner because you ought to be in jail.
Well, we'll see what you can do about it.
Okay, you never want to be the guy that says, see what you can do about that. I'm sorry, you just don't. You don't want to ask, especially if you know what kind of stuff you've been up to in Minnesota. All right, so you heard the back and forth there. Josh Hawley accusing, and rightly so, Keith Ellison of letting the fraud happen in his state. And this is exactly what happens every time, guys. He can pretend to clutch his pearls all he wants, and he can pretend to be outraged by these accusations. But look around. Either you're in on it or you're dumb as a rock. It happens here in California all the time, where I'm broadcasting to you from today. They take money that is doled out to all of these different sources. Those sources somehow funnel these things into groups that support the politicians again. It's a vicious circle, and the Democrats know it. Keith Ellison knows it. Tim Walz knows it. Look, it's bad enough for Tim Walz not to try to run again for governor. It's bad enough to keep him from just running for president. He's going to be getting out of politics because it is that bad. Wouldn't you love to hear from a leader that says, you know what? This is some bad stuff that's happening, and we pledge we're going to get to the bottom of it. But what happens? These Democrats, they scream, they yell, they deny, and then they get just as aggressive. I mean, they just get aggressive. So I think they're protesting a little too much, don't you? It'll be interesting to see how all of these investigations play out. And I know many of us want to see some conclusion, some finality to these investigations that are going on. But when it comes to fraud in Minnesota, when it comes fraud in California, they will find something. And people like Attorney General Keith Ellison should hope that they have their fingers clean in all of it. Jennifer Horn in for Scott Jennings. Common sense for the American people.
Hey, it's Scott Jennings. You know, depending on where you live, crime may be skyrocketing. And you may already own a firearm, but before you face the financial, legal, and emotional weight of pulling the trigger, there's a smarter option. It's called Byrna. That's B-Y-R-N-A. Byrna makes a less lethal launcher that fires tear gas and kinetic rounds designed to stop an attacker for up to 40 minutes. That gives you time to escape and call for help without deadly consequences. Their best-selling compact launcher is sleek, slim, and incredibly powerful. It's about the size of a smartphone, and it is ideal for concealed carry. It's comfortable, discreet, and confidence-building. It fires at 400 feet per second with serious stopping power, enough to shut down a threat fast without the legal and moral complexity of lethal force. Byrna is proudly American. Over 80% of the components are U.S.-sourced. Every Byrna launcher is hand-assembled in Fort Wayne, Indiana. With over 750,000 of these things sold worldwide, Byrna is best in class. It's legal in all 50 states. No background checks. Comes right to your door. Learn more at Byrna.com, BYRNA.com.
Conversations and stories you simply won't hear from the mainstream media. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
It sure is, and we thank you for joining us. I'm Jennifer Horn in for Scott today. If you're missing him, follow The Jennings Show on X. Jennings Show is where you can find him. You can find me there too, at Jennifer Horn. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Jennifer Horn Radio. I host the Morning Answer on Salem Media in Los Angeles. And you may have heard in California, we have a brand new newspaper. If you're watching on Salem News Channel, you will see me holding up the California Post, which is a sister publication to the New York Post. And today's headline just made me laugh. Man on emission. Not a mission, emission. Cars will cost $2,400 less after Dem rules are scrapped, according to President Trump. That was one of the big stories this week in Washington, D.C., is that President Trump's EPA undid Obama-era greenhouse gas rules used to justify different climate regulations that don't do a lot for the environment, but certainly do a lot to cost all of us a lot of money, both consumers and manufacturers. So joining us right now to talk all about it is Elizabeth Troutman Mitchell. She is a White House correspondent for the Daily Signal. You can give her a follow on X at the Eliz Mitchell. Elizabeth, thanks so much for being with us. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
We got you because we did the bait and switch. We told you we'd give you Scott, but you got Jennifer instead. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
All right, so take us through. You did a big piece on this at the Daily Signal. What do we need to know about these regulations that were scrapped? Because this is not something small. This is actually the largest act of deregulation that we've probably seen in the history of the United States.
Yes, this is a very big deal. As you said, prices for consumers will be drastically reduced because of this change. So under the Obama administration in 2009, they issued this endangerment finding saying that 6 greenhouse gases were causing danger to human health and to climate change. And so those greenhouse gases were not allowed under that rule. But that finding relied on data all the way back from 2007, which has since been proven to be incorrect, that the data was misapplied to say that greenhouse gases cause climate change, when in reality we don't have much evidence that these greenhouse gases really do harm humans. And so even though we knew from newer data that 2007 study, those studies were likely faulty, this 2009 rule has been in place for a very long time, raising prices for consumers of things like energy, buying a car, preventing job growth, home growth, housing prices, various other factors. So this is probably the biggest deregulatory action in either Trump administration, as you said, maybe in history, and consumers can't expect to see a major impact.
And you know, it was interesting because while this came from 2009, and you just referenced that the science has changed, as science will do, right? Science and research, it changes and it corrects itself. We didn't see a drawback of that during the Biden years. In fact, he actually pushed more regulation on the American people. Why did he do that?
Well, I think that the deregulatory actions we're seeing in the Trump administration is really one of the most interesting factors that we've seen. This has happened at a variety of different agencies. Really, every agency is working on getting rid of this regulation because regulation has a tendency to raise prices for consumers. You can see in California, as we were just talking about the California Post, where people have not been able to rebuild their houses after the wildfires because of all this regulation. And so this is a very big problem that the United States faces. So many regulations prevent Americans from living their lives as they should be able to do. And so we're seeing a really big push here.
You know, it's really interesting you brought that up. So not only do you have the slow rebuilding effort because you have to go through all of these environmental studies and licenses and permits and all of the stuff that's really holding people back from rebuilding their homes. But we also in California, and I just talked about this earlier in the hour when we were talking about the economy and the fact that inflation is cooling and the economy finally feels like it's picking up again. Almost everywhere across the country, people are feeling that change at the gas pump, except in California. And that's also a result of extra taxes that are supposed to go to environmental standards. I mean, we're paying almost $1 more than the rest of the country just in taxes alone.
Wow, that sounds just terrible. Terrible to live in California and have to deal with those prices.
Thanks,
but
Elizabeth.
Glad
I can
to see
feel
gas prices are.
I feel your sympathy. I know. As I, literally, I mean, you're like saving up $600 just to get a gallon or two of gasoline around here. No, I'm a little dramatic there. But let's talk about how people are really going to feel this impact, because I think for a lot of us, we hear, okay, deregulation, emissions. Some of us will kind of be outraged by this if we're into the climate. You can still want a clean environment and still appreciate what this is going to do to free things up for us. So how will the American people actually feel this, Elizabeth?
Definitely. So this is going to be part of that big affordability push we've seen from the Trump administration leading up to the midterms. They've been doing a lot for affordability for Americans and have been putting a really big emphasis on this in their messaging. And I think that this will be a really strong feature for them, because something that really drives up cost of living for Americans is utility prices and housing prices. Those are some of the two biggest costs that people are dealing with, and gas, of course, as you said. And so getting rid of these limits on these 6 greenhouse gases should really reduce prices of those things and make everyday life less expensive for the average American.
Let's hear from Lee Zeldin. He was at the White House and he was there for this announcement, of course, calling this the biggest deregulation in American history. Cut 7.
And today's action does not change regulations on traditional air pollutants and air toxics. This EPA is committed to providing clean air for all Americans. Powering the great American comeback is based on the singular focus of providing clean air, land, and water for all Americans while harnessing the greatness of the American economy. That's a big difference from our predecessor. We believe that we can and must choose both. If you want an electric vehicle, buy one. If you want a diesel truck, then buy that. If you want a gas-powered vehicle or a hybrid, well, more power to you. That's what freedom and choice look like. We're restoring the rule of law, we're grounding policy in reality, we're giving power back to the American people. And we're bringing back the American dream stronger than ever before.
Elizabeth Troutman Mitchell is with us, White House correspondent for the Daily Signal. Great publication. You can follow her at the Eliz Mitchell. And Elizabeth, you heard Lee Zeldin there. And what I think this really brings up is the power of the free market. If you want to do both things, if you want to provide more affordable vehicles, if you want to give cheaper energy to the American people, but you still are creating a marketplace where people can do better to achieve clean environmental goals, we can do both when the free market prevails.
Yeah, that's something we're hearing a lot of praise from conservative energy experts saying that people should have a choice if they want the more environmentally efficient version of a car, or if they want the old version that they liked and it works well for them and it's cheaper. We've seen this with, for instance, gas stoves. When there's been regulation on what kind of stove people should have for the environment, that's something that Republicans have opposed because they're saying that people should be able to choose what kind of stove they want. This also came up even with shower heads. You might remember that several months ago, the Trump administration rolled back a Democrat regulation on shower heads about the water pressure of shower heads that were taking away choice people could have in their water pressure. And so this is just one of those, a big part of making sure that there aren't regulations that prevent people from being able to choose how they want to live their everyday life.
And how they want their hair to look. Because you'll remember, I think everybody remembers President Trump lamenting those low flow shower heads because they didn't properly care for that beautiful hair of his. I remember that very clearly. Elizabeth, what has been the reaction to this? I'm sure at the Daily Signal, you get people who are excited about this. You get people who are upset. What is in it that is making people worry? They're not going to read that the science isn't there. They're just going to hear that this is President Trump taking aim at the climate. So what are you hearing on the other side of the aisle?
I think that a criticism we're hearing, of course, is that this is going to be potentially bad for the environment, concerned about harms on man-made climate change from this. Others are saying that this will benefit certain billionaires who won't have to deal with these regulations anymore. But I think what the Trump administration is really putting their focus is on the average American consumer, because if these big businesses don't have to deal with these regulations, they will be able to present, in many cases, these products at a lower price to Americans. And so that's what we're hearing in response to those criticisms.
And it all goes back to politics, I think, when we think about the midterm elections, and we know that we're going into 2026, which even though President Trump isn't on the ballot, it's an important year for him to make sure that his party stays in control in the House of Representatives and in the Senate. If this is messaged right, Elizabeth, I think you go out to the American people, you say, look what we've done. We freed things up. We were giving you more choice. We're not forcing the government to tell you what's best for you. And I mean, if you're looking for a new car, the fact that you're going to save $2,400 off the bat because they're loosening restrictions, that's going to make you feel pretty good. But this all comes down to messaging. Just watching how this administration works as a White House correspondent for the Daily Signal, what do you think this needs to look like in the coming months to really sell this to the American people?
Yeah, I think that heading into midterms, Trump administration should stick with that strategy of really driving all the affordability wins home, because that's what people vote on. People vote on their quality of life, how they're able to afford their life. They vote on their rent prices, their utility prices, their ability to buy groceries, get gas at a reasonable price. And so anything the Trump administration has done to lower those everyday prices, I think, is something they really should be homing in on leading into midterms. Of course, in the first year, we've also seen a lot of focus on foreign policy. And while a lot of that has been great, I think now is the time to shift to really driving the points home about affordability. And this greenhouse gas change is going to be a key part of that for sure, like you said.
All right, final question for you, Elizabeth. We so appreciate your time, and the Daily Signal does great work. You do great work there. In all of the announcement that you've seen rolled out at the White House, I mean, this has got to be one that actually has the most real-life significance, or at least close. Is this one of the biggest announcements that you've seen with the biggest widespread ramifications?
I think so. I mean, rolling back these regulations on 6 greenhouse gases, this is a pretty big deal, and it will most definitely affect everyday Americans. It can be kind of complicated subject to get into, but in reality, the fact that car prices will go down $2,400, that's not complicated at all, and everyone will reap the benefits of that.
I know, especially if you start to get discounts on buying American cars, you start to be able to write that off of your taxes. All of a sudden, those auto manufacturers that were suffering for a long time, they're going to be feeling pretty good. And I think all of us who've been waiting to get a new car might be feeling pretty good too. Elizabeth Troutman Mitchell, thank you so much for being with us. Make sure you give her a follow, the Liz Mitchell. You can find her on X, and she is the White House correspondent for the Daily Signal. Check out the Daily Signal for all of your latest news. They have great features and articles like this one. You can read all about this new announcement from Lee Zeldin and President Trump at the White House this week. It's dailysignal.com. Elizabeth, thank you so much for being with us. All right,
Thank you.
We have lots more up ahead. It is Jennifer Horn in for Scott Jennings. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
Saving Western civilization, one busted leftist narrative at a time. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
Yes, it is. Thank you for joining us at the Scott Jennings Show, Common Sense for the American People. I'm Jennifer Horn, happy to be filling in for my friend Scott Jennings. He's getting some really well-deserved time off, filling up that tank so he is ready for battle. You got to be ready for battle because, you know, guys, the State of the Union is coming up. I mean, we've got a lot to be ready for. The Democrats are already trying to figure out how they're going to disrupt President Trump during his State of the Union address. So, you know, Scott will be back. He'll be back with you on Tuesday. In the meantime, it is great to be here with you. Now, I know we haven't been spending a ton of time on this program talking about the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, Savannah Guthrie's mom. For those of you who don't know, Savannah Guthrie is the co-host of the Today Show. I was shocked to know how many people didn't know who Savannah Guthrie was, but just shows you how the news cycle has changed. So the FBI has released a description of the suspect in the Nancy Guthrie disappearance. This was after a Nest cam somehow cobbled back together. Another piece of this story that should be disturbing to all of us. Even when you think that your Nest cam isn't recording everything, it's recording everything. There's no privacy. I did a show on my story, or I did a story on my show this week about how your Wi-Fi router can actually detect your whereabouts in the house and like the position that your body is in. So there's no privacy. Even when you think you're just privately doing downward dog in your living room, everybody is watching, including your Wi-Fi router, apparently. But the FBI says that the man that they are looking for, and they're now calling him a suspect for the first time, is 5'9" to 5'10", tall with an average build. He's wearing a black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack backpack, which apparently can be purchased at Walmart for like $10. So that limits it. The FBI increased the reward today from $50,000 to $100,000 for information leading to the location of Nancy Guthrie or the arrest and conviction of anyone involved with her disappearance. But here's where it gets strange, and this is where my tentacles have gone up. Have you been following the Pima County Sheriff? Their forensic team, we're at day 13 of the disappearance, have been seen searching the brush off a road near Nancy Guthrie's home yesterday. The search for the missing 84-year-old woman is now in its 13th day. TMZ founder Harvey Levin said to Fox News that his organization received a third letter claiming to know who the alleged kidnapper is and asking for one single Bitcoin, which is valued, I think, around $56,000 or $60,000. So they're asking for that for information because they know who the kidnapper is. Here's where it gets strange, though, with the sheriff. The Pima County Sheriff's name is Chris Nanos. He is a Democrat. He just won in a very close election as sheriff, and there was a recount, actually. So there was, it was a close race. And apparently this guy, I think we could describe him as vindictive. Part of the reason that we've had trouble, I think, identifying many of the facts in this case, what's true, what's not, is because he's been holding a lot back. There was some fumbling around with the scene. He released the scene very early on. He also apparently couldn't go and fly a plane in the hours after the reported disappearance with thermal imaging because he was angry and fired the pilot, or reassigned the pilot. He also reassigned many of his homicide detectives for personality disorders. Apparently, the person who ran against him for sheriff was also had some sort of retribution case against the sheriff. Well, now we're hearing that Chris Nanos was withholding essential physical evidence from the FBI. Instead of sending a glove that was found inside the house of Nancy Guthrie to Quantico, this sheriff sent it to his processing facility in Florida. Now, the problem with that is that Quantico is very well prepared to deal with all of this. If they can't find anything in Florida, guess what's going to happen? They're going to package that glove and they're going to send it up to Quantico for further testing. So you could have saved a step. But Chris Nanos was not apparently willing to cooperate in that way with the FBI. Now, he's pushing back on that, saying that this is an attempt by the news media to sow division between investigators. But is there something political at play? Could he be slow walking it? Is he worried that this could be a cartel that perhaps carried out this attack? It wouldn't be great for politics, especially for Democrat politics. What's the story here? There is definitely more to unpack. And I think not only with the circumstances, obviously no one knows we want the safe return of Nancy Guthrie, but is there something more that is delaying this investigation because of politics being played with the Pima County Sheriff? It'll be an interesting one. We'll be sure to continue to follow that story. We have a lot more up ahead. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jennifer Horn, in for Scott Jennings. It's common sense for the American people.
If the leftists haven't had enough yet, there's more. This is the Scott Jennings Show. The voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
Hey, it's Scott. Thanks for listening to Common Sense for the American People. I am taking the day off, but sitting in for me today, my friend, Jennifer Horn. Jennifer, take it away.
He doesn't do it very often. He is one of the hardest working men in radio and TV. But yes, it is true. Scott Jennings is taking a little break, and I am so happy to be filling in for him today, bringing common sense to the American people. I'm Jennifer Horn. I host The Morning Answer on Salem Radio, Salem Media in Los Angeles. Welcome in to the program, and we are going to do our best to deliver that common sense that Scott brings you every single day here on the program. Guys, we are headed at midnight tonight to a partial government shutdown. Yes, another one if you are counting. Sadly, it is 3 under, in the second term of President Trump. Democrats feel like this is the only way, I guess, that they can make a stand against the Trump administration and many of their successes that they have been thrown out to all of us for the last year or so. So joining us right now, this partial shutdown is going to really super focus on the Department of Homeland Security. Former DHS Acting Secretary Chad Wolf is here. He is the founder and president of Wolf Global Advisors, also doing great work with a group that I love very much, the America First Policy Institute. Chad, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to be here.
It's great to have you here on a day like today, and certainly you know the pressures of this job better than most people on the planet. It seems silly to me that Democrats are making this stand against ICE by trying to hurt DHS, because this hurts almost everybody but ICE, seeing as how ICE has already received its funding in the big, beautiful bill. So what is going to be affected at midnight tonight?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of the frontline officers at the Department of Homeland Security are what we would consider to be essential employees. So they have to show up for work regardless of whether or not they're getting paid. So there will be some functions of the department that aren't moving forward. Those employees will be staying home. But unfortunately, ICE, CBP, they can get paid because, as you indicated, there's funding in that one big, beautiful bill. But, the 50 or 1,000 or so aviation security screeners, our Coast Guard men and women, FEMA employees who are trying to get disaster relief out, some of them won't be working, and some of them, unfortunately, will be working, but they won't be getting paid. And so while they're on the job trying to protect the American people, screening you for explosives and other things, they're thinking about how to make rent. And they're thinking about their family because they don't have an income coming in, because the Democrats have decided that, that the sanctuary cities weren't enough to thwart ICE, that they want to put some real limitations in place in legislation.
It really is silly, because by trying to thwart ICE and make them the bad guys, all they're doing is sowing more chaos in our streets. I spoke to you off the air and told you I'm in Los Angeles. We see it here. We saw it this summer. Obviously, Minneapolis sees this. The politicians in charge and many members of Congress who are voting to shut down the government or choosing to shut down the government are only putting gasoline on a fire that doesn't need it right now. We should be supporting law enforcement and talking about how we can work together against criminal illegal aliens.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Look, the Democrats have this all wrong, which is to say, in 98% of the jurisdictions around the country, ICE has no issues there in those communities, because they work with ICE to make sure that those agents and officers can do their job. It's only in sanctuary policies where you have leaders, the mayor and the governor in Minneapolis, for instance, who are putting policies in place that go against what ICE is trying to do. And so you have sanctuary policies. So they put up sanctuary policies that thwart ICE. And when something happens because of those policies, their answer is to limit ICE's authority even more. And I think what it tells you is that they don't like ICE. They don't like the mission that ICE has. They want to abolish ICE. And this is just another way to do that. When I came in and to work for President Trump in 2017, we had to undo some very destructive policies at ICE that President Obama had put in place. Well, 4 years later, Joe Biden put them back in place. And President Trump this term revoked those policies. But what you see now with the Democrats and their list of 10 demands, they want to enshrine all of that into law so that a future Republican president doesn't have any leeway, doesn't have any latitude to implement policies like he or she would want to do, because they've got these limitations enacted in statute.
Isn't it all because they think they benefit from the chaos? I mean, I think that's what's so sad, is that so many of our elected officials think more about politics than they do about the job that they're sworn to keep and what they're supposed to do for the people that they represent. I mean, you brought up the sanctuary policies. The reason that we have any violence at all is that they aren't allowing, in many of these jurisdictions, the peaceful turnover of violent criminals to ICE. They release them into communities and then clutch their pearls when ICE agents have to go into school, near a school or into a Home Depot or into a neighborhood scenario to try to arrest somebody who's a really bad person, who's convicted of doing bad things. You've got a desire, I think, to import poverty and crime just to cause chaos so that they can say, their words, not mine, that this American experiment is failing and we have to try something new.
Yeah, well, you brought up, whether it's a child care center or a church, a daycare, a hospital. The Democrats have said in their list of demands that, we want to limit or we want to prohibit ICE from doing any operations there. And just from a law enforcement perspective, this makes no sense in the world, that if ICE is pursuing a criminal illegal alien, this is someone that's wanted for murder, perhaps they're wanted for child pornography, perhaps they're wanted for something even worse, and that individual runs into a church or a hospital, that somehow ICE is supposed to stop and say, oh well, have a good day. We're not allowed to go in there. Even though you're a criminal, even though you're a threat to this community, we're not allowed to go in there. We don't tell any other law enforcement officer to do that. They get to pursue that suspect, because the idea is that if you put that suspect into custody, you're protecting other parts of the community. And so this is where, the Democrats, particularly those in Congress who have never served in a law enforcement capacity, they don't really understand the mission.
Yeah.
And they have some pretty wild demands.
Former DHS Acting Secretary Chad Wolf is here, and that we are probably in for a long haul on this one. Do you think this gets settled quickly, or is this going to be something that goes on and on? If you were a betting man, what would you think here?
Well, it's a tough one. I think if you were to ask me right now, this one probably goes on a little while because I don't see that the Democrats really want to give any. And some of their demands are just so outlandish that, the White House can't give in either. Because the reality is if the White House gives in, which is totally not the right way to go, that it cripples ICE from doing their job. And that's never good. You want to allow ICE to do their job. If you want to give on training or body cameras or some things like that, that's fine. But when you're talking about, you to have ICE that you can't wear any mask and you have to put your name on your uniform, well, you're now not protecting that officer because we know they're being doxxed or worse. But again, what the Democrats want to do is make it so hard to be an ICE officer that you have to cut back on their missions. And so therefore you're removing fewer and fewer individuals.
We have just about 10 seconds left with you, but I do think that it was strategic for President Trump to have Tom Homan withdraw the surge out of Minneapolis because now they don't have that chaos that they can use as political pressure. Do you think that makes a difference, Secretary? Do you think that makes a difference when they don't have the media covering chaos in the streets to maybe get them to soften on this?
Yeah, perhaps. But look, when Tom went there, obviously the president didn't like what he was seeing. And so it was a change of course. But a surge, it's dubbed Metro Surge, right? And a surge is you surge into a community for a limited amount of time. You make your arrest and then you leave that community and you go to different ones. It's the very definition of a surge.
Yeah.
And so
I
hear a lot of folks saying, yeah, mission accomplished.
It seems that
4,000 criminal arrests.
Absolutely.
4,000 criminal arrests.
3,000 kids saved. I mean, this was a mission accomplished situation. Chad Wolf, thank you so much. Follow him at Chad F. Wolf, former acting DHS secretary. We appreciate you. Jennifer Horn in for Scott. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
Fighting for free speech and Western civilization. This is the Scott Jennings Show. You want to drive a leftist crazy? Tell the truth and keep smiling. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
That's how I roll. I know that's how Scott Jennings rolls as well. Happy Warriors only here, please. Life's too short and sad to get angry all of the time. And you know what? We beat them with our smiles, that's for sure. Welcome in. It is the Scott Jennings Show. I'm Jennifer Horn. Happy to be in for my friend Scott Jennings. He's enjoying some time off today. He'll be back on Tuesday. But, guys, I want to invite you to our Patriots Gulf of America cruise. Now, Scott is brand new around these parts at Salem Radio. I have done the last 2 Salem cruises. We had Sebastian Gorka and Mike Gallagher. We had Larry Elder and Mike Gallagher, and I got to go on both of those cruises. Pretty lucky. And Alaska was fantastic. But I have to tell you, I might be even more excited for our Gulf of America cruise. Who doesn't want to dip their toe in patriotic blue Gulf of America waters? Everybody wants that. It's America 250, guys. We got to celebrate, and we are going to do it aboard Holland America, a luxury cruise line. I have been on this ship before. It is amazing. It's not too big. It's not too small. They have beautiful amenities. The cabins are great. The food is fantastic. The pool area is just amazing. It's what you want on a cruise ship. But here's what's great. Not only are we going to Half Moon Cay in the Bahamas, Ocho Rios in Jamaica, we're going to Cozumel, Mexico, and then my favorite, we're going to Georgetown in the Cayman Islands. So I'm going to have my own excursion to take all of you to go open up shady bank accounts. I feel like that's what we do when we go to the Cayman Islands, right? We open up some sort of shady bank account so we can do something bad down the road. Just kidding. But we're going to get together on this ship. We're going to all those incredible locations. We're doing it together. Mike Gallagher, Scott Jennings, and yours truly, Jennifer Horn. And I am going to tell you that when we were on this ship, first, it's great to cruise because your hotel travels with you. This is perfect whether you are a single traveler or if you're coming as a couple or as a whole group. These are really customizable trips. But what is fun is that you travel with like-minded patriots, which you're going to create lifelong friendships. I have on the last 2 trips. It's just amazing. And pretty much every day that we're on board the ship, when we are not in port, well, there's either a speech or a talk or a Q&A or a book signing or a meet and greet. We have so much fun. We laugh, we learn, we inspire each other. And don't we all need a little inspiration So for all of you patriots who want to join us, this is Salem Media's Gulf of America cruise. Inspiration Travel does an incredible job with their VIP cruising. So join us. If you want to see the cabin, you want to see the itinerary, go to inspirationtravel.com/Gulf Cruise, inspirationtravel.com/Gulf Cruise. Or call 855-565-5519, 855-565-5519, or text the word cruise to 94878. Cruise to 94878. And I got to tell you, Mike Gallagher and I are pros on these trips, so we're going to break in Scott Jennings. We're going to make him have a lot of fun. I think he is going to love it. So we can't wait to see you. All right. You may have heard about an hour ago, President Trump was boarding Marine One. He is right now speaking to troops at Fort Bragg, and he's with Melania Trump. They are talking to the brave men and women who helped make a perfectly executed, successful mission to arrest Nicolas Maduro and bring him to America for where he sits in a jail cell today. And I mean, there was a flawless execution by these brave men and women who President Trump is celebrating right now in Fort Bragg. But before he jumped on Marine One, he did his kind of, helicopter talk where you end up learning a lot. He talked about the government shutdown. He celebrated the great report on inflation, but he also talked about Iran. And President Trump said that if we don't cut a deal soon, that it is going to be a bad time for that country. Cut 14.
How confident are you that our negotiations with Iran will be successful?
I think they'll be successful, and if they're not, it's going to be a bad day for Iran. Very bad.
Now, he spoke about the second aircraft carrier, which they sent to the Middle East, obviously to add a little strength to tell Iran that we're serious about these negotiations. Cut 18, 16.
One of the
second aircraft carrier that you decided to send. Talk about why you made that choice.
Well, in case we don't make a deal, we'll need it. If we don't have a deal, we'll need it. If we have a deal, we could cut it short. It'll be leaving very soon. We have one out there that just arrived. If we need it, we have it ready. A very big force.
President Trump with his, peace through strength, saying we've got that carrier there if we need it. He doesn't want to use it. I don't think anybody wants to have a military confrontation with Iran. But certainly we need Iran to come to the negotiation table and make a lasting deal. What happens next is the big question with regime change in Iran. That's what I think has everybody a little bit concerned about who might find their way into power next and how many of the people of Iran are ready to support this. Clearly, they are looking for democracy. It's Jennifer Horn in for Scott Jennings. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
Common sense for the American people. This is the Scott Jennings Show. News, comment, and the stories and facts the mainstream media refuses to discuss. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
It sure is. Thanks for joining us. Happy Friday to all of you. Happy Valentine's Day. President's Day weekend is upon us. Be safe out there if you have a nice long weekend. Good for you. I'm Jennifer Horn in for Scott Jennings today. You can give me a follow on social media, Jennifer Horn Radio on Instagram and Facebook, or Jennifer Horn on Truth and X. Love to connect with you in both of those places. And you can always follow Scott and the program at Jennings Show on X. All right. A lot of the news today has to do with immigration, with ICE. We know that we are headed for a partial government shutdown tonight at midnight. DHS will be shut down, at least their funding. Democrats have already left town. Doesn't seem like we even have to read the tea leaves here. We know what is going to happen. And of course, that is because they hate ICE. They just not a fan. They don't like the actions that ICE they have been taking in American cities. They want stipulations that the White House is just simply not going to agree to because it puts agents' lives in jeopardy. So this week we heard we had a lot of testimony. We started out the week with Todd Lyons, who is the ICE chief, and he did a great job testifying before a House committee and before the Senate as well. He got into a conversation with Senator Lankford, and Senator Lankford talked about, he's from the state of Oklahoma. He talked with Lyons about what ICE has really done. And I want you to hear these numbers. 1.6 million illegal aliens, final removal orders in the United States. 800,000 of those aliens have criminal convictions. Listen in, cut 3.
This issue came up about final order of removal. what percentage of folks that actually have a detainer put on them nationwide or that are in removal processes have a final order of removal? Does anyone know that number, that percentage?
No, sir, not the percentage. I can give you what we're tracking right now is about 1.6 million final orders in the United States, with approximately 800,000 of those having criminal convictions.
Now, keep in mind, already the Trump administration has deported many criminal illegal aliens from this country, but Democrats are still shouting that they want to defund ICE. I thought today might be a good day to introduce you to a friend of mine. She is an angel mom. Her name is Agnes Gibboney. She lives here in Southern California. You can give her a follow at Agnes_Gibboney. And Agnes, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome into the Scott Jennings Show.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. It's an honor to be on your program.
Well, here's why I thought today was an important day. As everybody in the country is considering their perspective on ICE, on what they do in American cities, looking at the images of what happened in Minneapolis, I think we have to remember why we're doing this. And it's the stories of angel families and angel moms who keep the memory of their family members alive, like you. Why don't you tell us about your son, Ronald?
My firstborn and only son, Ronald, was shot and killed by a previously deported criminal illegal alien that had a long, long history of arrests. And it completely destroyed my family. And I say I am permanently separated from my family, from my son, by 6 feet of dirt in the coffin, thanks to inept politicians who look the other way and allow any riffraff to come into our country. We need ICE. We need DHS. We need to secure our borders. And thank God for the beautiful Secretary Kristi Noem, who's doing just that, and Tom Homan and President Trump that is putting Americans first.
You know, we're going to talk about that because you had a visit actually with Kristi Noem this week. If you can believe it, amidst all of this, she actually flew across the country to talk to you, to hear your story. But Agnes, you are not alone. To honor your son, you chose to get active. And I look at you, I've known you for a long time. This was one of the things that you can do to keep your son alive, his memory alive, and you have created quite a group of angel families, angel moms who have gone to Washington, D.C., who have tried to get legislation to honor their kids who can't do it for themselves. And it boggles my mind when I see today's Democrat Party really not wanting to even talk to you, Agnes, or hear your story or hear about your son. And they instead stand on the side of sex traffickers and predators by standing for these criminal illegal aliens that should be deported.
Absolutely. And the sad thing is that they look the other way. They completely ignore us. And the first one that ever gave us a voice was President Trump. And I am so honored that he is keeping his promise, what we voted for. We want to feel secure in our country. And Kristi Noem and ICE is doing just that. And what do they get in return? ICE agents get attacked. Who are these people, for crying out loud? They are protecting youth, removing criminals, the wrong element from our country who victimized our citizens, and they are the ones being attacked.
Yeah.
Who are these people? They need to have their heads checked because they're doing a fabulous job, and I wish they could double it up and triple it what they have deported, but they're limited resources.
And politics are just it's a funny game. You know, people are willing to sacrifice right and wrong to try to make political statements. Now, you had something pretty extraordinary happen this week. The Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem came to your house, Agnes. I couldn't believe it when I heard this story. And she wasn't alone. She had Fox News there covering the trip, but she came. What was the reason for her visit, Agnes?
She wanted to sit down with me to give me a voice and support angel moms. And I wanted to support. I was so honored. I cannot even begin to tell you how honored I was that she chose me to come to my home. We sat down about 15 minutes to talk very candidly about my situation, what happened to my son. And not just my son, because my only sibling died 4 months after my son was shot and killed from a massive stroke from the overwhelming stress. And she cared. You know, it is so unbelievable to have the Secretary of Homeland Security in my home and then listen to me, look at my tears flowing and have compassion and understanding. Nobody in government has ever done that.
You know,
Nobody.
It makes...
I was, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
So honored.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I was so honored. Yes.
So let's talk about the message that is being sent to Angel families when they see these attacks on ICE. I think, sadly, what we get is that your story doesn't matter. The Angel family stories don't matter. I mean, you have introduced me to so many people who have lost loved ones in horrific manners at the hands of people who were not supposed to be in this country to begin with. We had the previous president who opened up the doors and let anybody in who wanted to come into the country. And now you've got these Democrats who are saying, you know what, we don't even want to fund DHS, even though ICE is already fully funded. We just want to make things difficult for Kristi Noem. We want to make things difficult for the department, all because they think that somehow, this is racist, politically beneficial to them. I'm not sure. What's your message to those Democrats today, Agnes?
Shame on you. All of those Democrats sitting in Congress right now, they ought to take their oath of office again, because their job is to protect and defend our country against foreign and domestic invaders, and they're doing just the opposite. Too bad we don't have it in our Constitution to remove these treasonous politicians in office. We have the right to feel secure in our own country. And you know, Jennifer, the other thing that really gets to me, I am a legal immigrant. Mm-hmm. We didn't come here because I married an American citizen, had one foot in the door. We didn't come here because we climbed over or under a fence. We came here through the right channels. We respected this country. In my country, these politicians are not respecting me as a legal immigrant who contributed to this country. It's a shame. They ought to all be ashamed of yourself. And I want to add something. In December, I had the pleasure to be in D.C. at Secretary Kristi Noem's hearing. I was embarrassed to call myself an American. What those Democrats did at that hearing was a disgrace. It was nothing more than a platform, than a theater for them to spew their hatred against Kristi Noem, against President Trump and Tom Homan and ICE agents. They twist the stories around like the little boy that the father ran away and left the 5-year-old. And the ICE agents took the little boy and took care of him with care and love and hugging that little boy. But they don't put that on the news.
Yeah.
They want to twisted to say something negative. God bless the men and women of ICE.
You know, and we talk about this today because DHS is going to be defunded at midnight tonight, at least for now, as they negotiate this government shutdown. What I think people don't understand, they hear your story, Agnes, and I think they probably, people who are listening to this program, you know, their hearts and their prayers are going out to you. But you've told me stories of other moms and families who are re-victimized because of poor justice system. And this is why ICE is so important. You turn over these criminals to ICE for deportation. When that doesn't happen, these people are getting out of jail that have murdered individuals. Agnes, we just have about a minute and a half left, but tell people about your friends who are now waiting for their child's murderer to be let out of prison after 3 life sentences.
3 life sentences plus 61 years in prison, and he got a parole hearing because he's getting older to be 55 years old, and the parole hearing for 2034, and now we got moved to 2029. It is a disgrace that once we close our case, our pain and our grief doesn't end. but we keep getting victimized by the judicial system in this country. 3 life sentences should be exactly that. Life in prison. It's not. It just looks pretty on the paper.
Yeah, you
It's
touched on it.
horrible what's happening.
You touched on a policy that maybe people haven't heard about, but here in California, once you turn, I think it's 50 or 55, they think obviously you're too old to commit a crime or something.
Right.
I mean, I think a lot of 55-year-olds might take issue with that, but they give you a chance at parole after a certain age. And even if you have 3 life sentences plus 60 years, and these are families who have lost their loved ones at the hands of criminal illegal immigrants, and today's Democrat Party is saying we need to play around, we need to have these guys wear masks, we need to have all of these different stipulations, or we are not going to stand with these families. It's disgraceful. But Agnes, thank you so much for sharing your story. We appreciate you.
I wish I could win $1 million on the lotto, so I would pay for ICE to continue, DHS to continue.
If you figure out how to crack the code of lottery winning, you let me know. That is my friend, Angel Mom, Agnes Gibboney. Thank you, Agnes. We appreciate you. Give her a follow at Agnes_Gibboney. I'm Jennifer Horn. In for Scott, it's the Scott Jennings Show.
Common sense for the American people. This is the Scott Jennings Show. Then you can count on here on this show. We tell the truth. You can count on it. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
You sure can. We're telling the truth right now. You can trust us. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show. Common sense for the American people. I'm Jennifer Horn. Thanks for joining us on the Salem Radio Network, Salem News Channel. You can follow me at Jennifer Horn Radio, Instagram and Facebook at Jennifer Horn, on X and on Truth Social. And always that you can follow the Scott Jennings Show at Jennings Show on social media. Scott will be back in on Tuesday. Now, we've had some breaking news happen as we started the program. President Trump speaking at Fort Bragg to our armed services. Take a listen. Cut 18.
One of the greatest and most celebrated military bases in the history of the world, Fort Bragg. We have your name back. We got your name back from the radical left. The radical left is not happy about it. It's another reason you have to vote for us, because they'll change it back to whatever it might be. This is the home of the legendary Green Berets, the home of the Sky Dragons, and the All-American 82nd Airborne. And in particular, I hear that we are joined by many exceptional soldiers from the 1st Brigade Combat Team, also known as the Devils in Baggy Pants. What's that all about? The Devils, they are devils. And you are devils, I will say. And I have no higher honor in life than to be your commander-in-chief. I'm so proud of you all. And so let me begin by saying a very, very big thank you to our great warriors and the men and women of the United States Army.
All right, that is President Trump speaking at Fort Bragg just moments ago and having a little fun, saying you got to keep us in power if you want to keep the name. You like the name? You got to vote Republican. All right, speaking of voting Republican, here in my hometown of Los Angeles, not a lot of people do that. You've probably heard. It is we've had no Republican elected to statewide office in almost 20 years. We've got Karen Bass, mayor of Los Angeles. And I just had to tell you this story because it has been on my mind as we wrap up today. And let this be a warning. If you are living the good life in Oklahoma or in Pennsylvania or in some other state that has a little bit of sanity, let this be a lesson to you, because Gavin Newsom, our governor, is coming for you. You know, he wants to be president very desperately. So there is a community in Los Angeles, in LA City, called Valley Glen. It's near North Hollywood. And in Valley Glen, they have had a rash of burglaries and break-ins. So the neighborhood got together. They pooled their resources. They invested in cameras. They invested in a license plate reader. They were not joking around. You know, they're saying we're going to take this seriously. And they should, because the LAPD is short-staffed. They are stretched thin. The police chief says that they need 3,000 more officers just to get kind of even. The 911 system is being overrun with complaints of homelessness. So this community does what conservatives like to do, right? We love personal responsibility. They get together, they come together as a group. I don't know who they vote for, but they get all of this security equipment in place, and they put up signs to warn the bad guys that they have this equipment. Do you know that the city of Los Angeles went to the neighborhood of Valley Glen and they said that their signs could be a liability and dangerous to people on the street? They didn't say it's the hypodermic needles, the homeless encampments, the people wandering around like overdosing on the street. They didn't say, heck, it's the mayor herself who's pretty dangerous, that those are the safety concerns. The city of Los Angeles went to these residents after they spent their own money on cameras and license plate readers and said that the signage they put up warning people about this is dangerous and a liability and illegal, and it has to come down. I'm just saying, don't Los Angeles, you're Dallas, Texas, guys. Don't let it happen. It happened while good. I mean, think about California. We were the state of Ronald Reagan, for crying out loud. We were actually red, and then we went purple, and then in a blink of an eye, bluer than blue. It happened while we were sleeping. Do not let this happen to you. That's my warning. Do not fall asleep at the switch, no matter how good you have it, no matter how red your community is. Keep your eyes open. Because what will happen is that you will be taking care of yourself, your family, your neighborhood, working together. And a Democrat city leader will come to you and say that that is dangerous when they can't even provide the police to protect you. Just be on the lookout. That's all I can tell you. Don't fall asleep at the switch or you'll turn into Los Angeles in about 3 years. It's that scary. All right, you guys, thank you so much for spending the day with us. Have a great Valentine's Day weekend, a great President's Day weekend. I'll be here Monday. Scott Jennings will be back on Tuesday. Follow the program at Jennings Show. Check out our cruise if you want to cruise with Scott and I. inspirationtravel.com/Gulf Cruise. Thanks so much for joining us. Jennifer Horn in for Scott. It is the Scott Jennings Show.